Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back to Fixing the Fish, and today we're going to be checking out a new fishing rod I picked up. And as you know, I've been a huge fan of the 1-3 Fishing Fate Chrome series rods, but after a lot of mishaps, a couple rods were broken due to my carelessness, but I've had more than a few of those rods also break while in the act of fishing and landing fish. And after I broke my last rod, I bought one in February, and then it broke in July. And what happened was I was fishing. It was a 7-foot medium heavy, and I was fishing. It was a slow, hot day. I casted a Senko out, let it sink to the bottom, and was just kind of standing there when a big fish took my Senko. As soon as he realized he was hooked, he made a run, and the rod tip snapped off. So after that, I decided I was going to buy another Fate Chrome, and I ordered one off of Amazon. Got it in the mail. The rod tip was broken. Sent it back for a replacement. Next one came in the mail. Rod tip was broken. Sent it back. Third one, rod tip broken. Sent it back. Didn't order another one. And the weird thing is they were all broken in exactly the same spot and the same place that I lost my fish on with the rod and that had hooked into the big one. So I said, well, you know what? I think I'm done with these 1-3 fishing rods. As much as I love them, as sensitive as they are, um, I've lost too many in the act of trying to catch a fish. More so than the ones I broke out of negligence. So I was in the market for a new rod, and I didn't want to spend a lot of money. So I ended up going with this. This is Walmart special right here. Berkley lightning rod. Been around forever. It's a 7-foot medium heavy casting rod. And it's worked really well. It's not a bad rod by any means. It's very strong. It's got a lot of backbone, cork grips. Not a bad rod. I really don't have any complaints about it, except that it's not as sensitive as the 1-3 fishing. And I started to think maybe that was just the trade-off, you know. In order to have a sensitive rod, that means that you're going to have a really brittle tip end, unless you're willing to spend a fortune. So I told myself I would just have to be satisfied with the lightning rod, and it's worked really well. But I did get to a point where I noticed that I was starting to lose fish on this rod because I just couldn't feel the bites as well as I could with the 1-3. So I started looking for another rod to replace this, and I still think it's a good rod for how much I spent for it. I'm going to continue to use it as a heavier casting setup, so it's not going to be neglected at all. It's just going to be beefed up to a heavier setup, more for like swim baits and things like that. But I started researching a replacement rod that would be equal to the sensitivity of the 1-3 fishing, and I came across something weird on Tackle Warehouse, which is this rod. This is the Spiralite Maverick, and this is a medium fast action 8 to 15 pound line, 3/16 to 5/8 ounce lures. It's a shaky head square bill rod, and my first impression of it was it's a really pretty rod. Feels really good, but here's the weird part. Look down the guides. Do you see that? The guides, they start on top and they spiral underneath to the bottom of the rod. Almost like it starts off as a bait casting rod and then it goes to be like a spinning rod. And that is called, it has many different names. A lot of people call this a spiral wrap, which is why this company is probably called Spiralite. It's also called a acid wrap because somebody in California, I guess, thought that somebody was on acid that had used one of these rods. Missouri wrap, and then finally it's called a Roberts wrap. And believe it or not, this has been around since the early 1900s. Believe it or not. and it's been used out west in like California for saltwater fishing for a long time, and it has some advantages. Oddly enough, this hasn't really caught on for bass fishing as much. I think there's been some resistance to the design over the years. I know G. Loomis came out with some and they just didn't sell, I guess. So this design in particular seems to be something that, you know, bench builders do to their rods these days. I think it's been kind of hard for companies to adopt this design. It's expensive, it's kind of hard to do, I guess mechanically, and just the market hasn't been there. But there's a lot of really good things about that spiral wrap that give you an advantage. So the first off is, you'll notice that it spirals. One of the advantages of having a spiral wrapped rod is that when you're fighting a big fish with normal guides, the rod tends to want to torque, you know, twist, and having it spiral wrapped, the rod tip will go, you know, down. It'll counteract that twisting, and you don't have to fight that twist as much. Another thing is you get a better cast out of it because of the spiral effect, and also you can get away with using a lighter action rod because of the way the guides are underneath the tip like that, and you do get increased sensitivity as well. You'll notice that the rod tip will go down and show more bite indication than a conventional guide rod. I've never used one. I've heard of this for saltwater. Didn't really know that there was anything outside of custom rods available on the market, and I just happened to find this on Tackle Warehouse, and I really like it. So far I haven't had a chance to use it, but we're going to go out and try it out, and I have high hopes for this rod. It was just a little bit more than a fake chrome, and I was willing to take a chance on it. Overall, without having tried it yet, I think it's a nice looking rod. It's got a foam end butt, and it's got a rubberized grip that feels really good. Trigger placement's really good. It's a very comfortable rod. It feels like an extension of my arm. I really feel connected to this rod when I'm holding it. So overall impressions are really good. The guides look really nice. They seem to be wrapped really well, and overall it's pleasing to the eye so far. But we're going to try out and see if the spiral wrap really makes a difference or not. But just overall impression is I like it. So we're going to go ahead and head out and see what happens. Alright, so I'm all loaded up, and we're going to try our first cast with this rod. And it felt like a normal cast. The wind is really kicking here. But what's really interesting is having this spiral wrapped guides hasn't really affected the cast at all. It feels just like a typical cast. Getting a good bite. Had a nip. Didn't take it. Might have been a smaller fish. Now, to be honest, I don't really feel much difference in casting. It feels just like a normal guide wrap rod. But I guess the real proof will be if I get a fish on. We'll see how that feels. This rod is slightly more than the fake chrome, so it wasn't like a big investment for me. It was already just a little bit more. I think it was $109 for this rod, and the fake chromes were around $80. So it was just a slight uptick in the cost. With that first bite, I could definitely tell there's been a bump up in sensitivity with the rod compared to the Berkley. And the Berkley is a good rod for how much it is. But if you're somebody like me that wants that ultra sensitivity, sometimes even big fish can be very light with their bites, and you'll end up missing them because you just don't feel it in time. Getting a lot of short strikes today. But the good thing is I'm definitely feeling those short strikes, whereas I don't think I would have been feeling them as much on the lightning rod. But I'm definitely not getting the commitment I'm looking for. So this might not be the best bait. This is a Reaction Innovations Sweet Beaver. And I was kind of hoping I'd get a bite on this, but got a couple nips. It might not be the profile they want today. So we're getting some bites, but they're not committing to it. So I'm not having a terribly positive bite here, but I can say this rod has a very crisp feel to it. Feels really good. Cast pretty much exactly where I want it to go. The Hurricane has definitely changed things around. Normally I've never caught a bass out of these ponds, and now there seems to be bass in this pond. I caught one not too long ago in here, which is weird because there weren't any before. Got a bite? Yep, got one. That was a good one. Yeah, not huge, but damn, not much. Not bad either. Absolutely no stress whatsoever on that rod. Handled it like a champ. Never even felt like I was rod totally handled that just fine. This is not a giant by any means. It's about a 2-pounder, maybe a pound and a half, but still medium action rod. At no point did I feel like I didn't have control over them. So already showing me that this configuration of the guides is really beneficial. And just gauging by that little 2-pounder, I can already tell that this rod can handle a lot heavier fish than that. So overall impressions of the rod, I think it's a really good rod. Very nice quality, well made. And I do think that the spiral wrap, there's something to it. I think it does allow you to use a lighter action rod for heavier applications. I think the guides being wrapped like that do exactly what they say it does. I still feel like it's just under the 1-3 fishing, so it's not quite as sensitive as a 1-3, but it's really sensitive, and I don't have to worry about breaking my tip off, which is my primary concern. Sensitivity is great, but if you keep breaking your rods off on fish, maybe not so much. So far I'm pretty impressed with it. I think it's worth the money, And I can't wait to get to some place where maybe the fish are a little bigger to really test this thing out. As far as I know, there's only one 4-pounder around, and didn't seem to be too interested in feeding. But definitely love the rod. Glad I picked it up, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this become a big thing for bass fishing in the near future. I wouldn't be surprised at all. There's absolutely no negatives to using a spiral wrapped rod, just positives. So the only reason I could see where people wouldn't want to use this type of rod is if they're overly concerned about what other people think and are afraid to be different. Believe it or not, that is an actual problem in bass fishing. Is a lot of people they're self-conscious and they're afraid to be different, afraid they're going to get weird looks or teased or something. I could care less. That's just me, though. But I definitely think this is a legitimate system that they've come up with. I think it works really well. I look forward to trying this thing out further when some of my places open back up. And I will be doing a follow-up video on this rod just to do a long-term performance test, and hopefully this thing holds up. Wow, the fish came right up behind that. He's a little one. He was waking and everything. Oh, man. He wanted that crankbait. I didn't feel like dealing with it, so I stalled it. It's a pain trying to get these little dinks off of these crankbaits. Anyway, I hope you guys found that interesting, informative, entertaining. That's going to do it for me. Till next time, thanks for watching. Keep fishing.